Hello everyone. Welcome to the New Year's episode of Weary Weekly History and Entertainment News. This is a continuation of the last 2-week Christmas episode, and this episode will be another 2-week edition. After, by far, the worst year that many people have experienced in their lifetimes, 2020 is finally over, and we are moving into 2021. Though things may not change when the calendar turns January 1st, it will get better in the new year. But it's also important to realize where Massachusetts has been. So on this week's episode, I'll be discussing the sports, movies, history, and more, as well as other issues that Massachusetts faced. First, it's time for this week's trivia question, which will be answered at the end of the show. This week's question is one that is a little tricky because it can only be found on a certain website. The question is, how many episodes of WWHEN are listed on PCTV's website? Now, for the year in review in sports, movies, history, and more. First, a brief reminder of the phases Massachusetts went through. On March 13th, when COVID-19 officially became a pandemic, Governor Charlie Baker and the state of Massachusetts announced a limitation on public gatherings. This lasted until May 18th, when the state announced plans to transition into Phase 1 of a 4-phase program. During each phase, different businesses could open up with restrictions in place. Massachusetts moved into Phase 2 on June 1st, Phase 3 Step 1 on July 2nd, and Phase 3 Step 2 on October 5th for lower risk communities. However, there were some drawbacks. For instance, a 50-person limit on attendance for events was enacted on August 11th after the state had a slight uptick in cases. Additionally, Berkshire County was forced to step back to Phase 3 Step 1 in November due to a huge spike in cases. Finally, on December 8th, Governor Charlie Baker announced that all communities in Massachusetts will be going back into Phase 3 Step 1 on Sunday, December 13th, after the state experienced a massive rise in COVID-19 cases. Make sure to visit mass.gov for more information on any changes the state goes through for COVID-19. Berkshire County is normally huge for sports, especially in the summer, but COVID-19 proved to be a challenge. First, the New England Collegiate Baseball League, where the North Adams Steeplecats play, announced on May 1st that their season would be canceled. A statement on the NECBL's page read in part, quote, "This decision was reached after a careful and thoughtful review of the guidance from federal, state, and local officials, the leadership of our host communities, and recommendations from the CDC and medical communities. The conclusion was that canceling the 2020 season was necessary for the healthy, safety, and well-being of our players, coaches, umpires, volunteers, fans, and host families," end quote. Then, in early May, the Futures League, where the Pittsfield Suns play, announced that their season would be up in the air. Futures League Commissioner Joe Palucci met with the owners of the league on May 14th, and they were thinking of possibly starting up the league on July 1st. the season would be shortened, so teams would only play 42 games. While the Futures League season eventually did happen, the Pittsfield Suns were not a part of it. On June 20th, owner Jeff Goldklang sent a letter to the other 6 league owners and Commissioner Joe Palucci. It read in part, quote, "In March, our organization developed a logistical plan to reopen our parks, filled with safety measures recommended by experts. That list was extensive and contemplated the safety of our players, fans, and co-workers in the most complete way possible. Sadly, we have determined that we are unable to guarantee those measures." End quote. The Suns were the only team from the Futures League to cancel their season, which was won by the Nashua, New Hampshire Silver Knights. Happily, there are plans for the team to return in 2021. In an interview with the Berkshire Eagle on November 27th, Goldklang stated, quote, "I believe that we will be 100% able to play come next late spring or early summer. We've had great conversations with the city of Pittsfield, and we are discussing a further extension of our licensing agreement." End quote. Even though the Pittsfield Suns did not play in 2020, former Suns player Cade Cavalli made history on June 11th when he was selected by the Washington Nationals 22nd overall in the first round of the 2020 MLB Draft. Not only is Cavalli the highest drafted Pittsfield Suns alumni, he is also the first player from the Suns to be selected in the first round. Prior to his freshman year at the University of Oklahoma, Cavalli played one summer for the Suns. There, he was mostly a third baseman and was named to the Futures League All-Star Game. Because of the lack of minor leagues due to COVID, Cavalli sat out the 2020 season, but does hope to return for 2021. Also for baseball, I had the opportunity to film at the Baseball at the Berkshires exhibit in Dalton in August, before it closed for the season. According to its website, its mission is to present exhibits and educational programs that will assist in telling the story of baseball in the Berkshires. Not only that, but it also describes how baseball in the Berkshires affected baseball in a wider American sense. I would really recommend this to my viewers in 2021 when it reopens back up, because it is great for socially distant events. Unfortunately, sports suspensions continued in the winter with the cancellation of the Bay State Winter Games figure skating competition. This popular event brings together the best figure skaters from the Northeast to the Lansing Chapman Rink at Williams College. This event has been going on since 1984. Bay State Executive Director Kevin Cummings said in a statement, quote, "It came down to facilities and understanding the situation at Williams College, and understanding that NESCAC, the conference that Williams College plays in, had canceled winter sports. Things were in flux with the facilities, and their decisions they were going to be making for the safety of their students." End quote. It is unclear whether or not the figure skating will occur at a different time and location. Additionally, curling will not occur at the Boys and Girls Club in Pittsfield where it is normally held. It may be moved to Central Massachusetts, if it's played at all. Also, the Masters Hockey Tournament is on hold. Stay tuned to WWHEN for updates, and also visit baystategames.org for all information on this popular event. The constant shifting of phases proved to be very difficult for movie theaters to keep up. For instance, the saga of the Regal Cinemas, which has a location in Lanesboro, Massachusetts, highlights the struggles that the movie theaters went through. In late June, the theaters announced that the company was planning to reopen by July 10th. However, a week before the theaters planned on reopening, it was then announced that the date was now moved to July 31st. This left WWHEN in a pickle, as on my July 8th episode, I mistakenly gave the July 10th reopening date. The new move was announced as I was editing the episode. 2 weeks later, Regal Cinemas then announced it was moving the date again to August 21st, but only on a state-by-state basis. Massachusetts did not receive immediate clearance. It was not until August 28th when Massachusetts Regal Cinemas were able to reopen, including the one in Lanesboro. Some of the new movies that were able to be released included Tenant, The New Mutants, and Unhinged, among others. I was able to watch The New Mutants at the Lanesboro Regal Cinemas on September 29th. If you are curious about my experience at the theaters, watch my October 6th episode. Unfortunately, the theaters were only able to be reopened for a few weeks. In early October, shortly after I went to the Lanesboro theaters, Regal Cinemas announced that it was closing theaters nationwide again. This was not directly due to the COVID situation itself, but rather the lack of new movies that were coming in. Many newer movies were forced to go to streaming services or on-demand platforms to be released, since many of the theaters in America were closed. Films that are released on demand or in streaming services cannot make money the proper way. It is based off of subscriber accounts to calculate box office returns. On WWHEN, I discussed many of the movies that went on demand. The first of these was the animated movie Trolls World Tour. Movies that followed included Scoob, The High Note, The King of Staten Island, Irresistible, Bill and Ted Face the Music, Antebellum, Love and Monsters, The Craft Legacy, and Let Him Go. The prices of these movies vary depending on release date. Another movie that was added to this list recently was Freaky. It was briefly in theaters in November before deciding to go on demand. This is a comedy horror film that deals with a serial killer who has magically switched bodies with a high school senior girl. Naturally, there is much confusion. Freaky stars Vince Vaughn, Katherine Newton, and Celeste O'Connor, and is directed by Christopher Landon. Because of the movie's quick journey to on-demand, Freaky currently costs $19.99. Also, more movies came on sites like Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple TV, and HBO Max, among others. The list of movies that were put on these streaming sites are way too much to list, and pricing is extremely complicated. Visit their respective websites for more information. This is going to continue in 2021 because Warner Brothers announced that it would be putting its entire slate of movies on HBO Max and theaters to countries that do not have access to it yet. But it is not known whether Warner Brothers will eventually put these new movies on demand. For better or for worse, streaming movies and watching them on demand is going to be the way a good amount of people are watching films in the future. As great as these new movies are, there is a problem. What about people who don't have access to streaming or can't afford it? How are they going to be able to watch movies? Going to the movies is a pastime of many people, myself included. It has been very depressing not seeing a movie on the theaters in months. what happens next? Some places in Berkshire County gave us a preview of alternative movie options. In the summer of 2020, Shakespeare and Company worked together with the Berkshire International Film Festival in Lenox to produce drive-in movies of Shakespeare-related content. Mahawi in Great Barrington also took this route. They showed a total of 15 movies during the summer, mostly classic family films at cheap prices. Also of interest, the Great Barrington Public Theater and Berkshire Film Media Collaborative were able to present Berkshire Outdoor Shorts, a series of solo films that are centered on the natural environment of the Berkshires. When asked about this series, Jim Frangione, the artistic director of the Great Barrington Public Theater, said, quote, "Artists everywhere are struggling. Everyone is struggling. In recognition of all the weeks and months that we've had limited opportunity to interact, we wanted to give writers and actors a safe, enjoyable space for creativity, an outlet to respond to the world we're all living in right now. We're so lucky to live in the Berkshires, where we have immediate access to natural beauty, open space, and fresh air. That was the inspiration for this series. And it's been a great collaboration with Berkshire Film and Media," end quote. You can currently watch these videos on YouTube. With all these cancellations of movies, outdoor activities became very popular. Nature trails were closed at first due to pandemic concerns, but eventually reopened in May with social distancing rules in place. In addition, 11 nature spots in Berkshire County received grants in September. These grants totaled $421,000 and helped the trails get back on their feet after a difficult year. Another popular 2020 event was shopping at farmers markets. I discussed farmers markets in full on the August 12th episode of WWHEN. There I talked about markets in North Adams, as shown here, Williamstown, Lenox, Pittsfield, Great Barrington, Lee, and Lanesboro. The Berkshire Farmers Market in Lanesboro was a doubly unique episode, because here I was able to film my first on-location filming. It proved to be a difficult challenge for many of these markets, but shoppers did remain 6 feet apart and stayed masked. Many of these businesses will continue their sales into the new year. One of my favorite segments on WWHEN have been the history portions of the show. WWHEN History came about when I realized that most of the arts and entertainment facilities were closed and going to remain closed. It was going to be difficult to constantly repeat that information to viewers, so I decided to expand the show into history. WWHEN started on the April 21st episode, with trips to MCLA Gallery 51, Mass MoCA, and the Williamstown Theater Festival. The next week, it continued in places such as Barrington Stage Company, Berkshire Theater Group, and the Lichtenstein Center in Pittsfield. As the episodes went on, I continued talking about regular arts and entertainment venues, and it became clear that they weren't going to reopen anytime soon. These included Tanglewood, Jacob's Pillow, the Mahawi Performing Arts Center in Great Barrington, Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, the Clark Art Museum in Williamstown, the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, Williams College Museum of Art, the Frelinghuysen and Morris Art House Studio in Lenox, and the Sands Galleries of Contemporary Art in Richmond. However, There are so many more unique history locations in Berkshire County than just arts and entertainment venues. I included other locations as well. These included, but were not limited to, Springside Park in Pittsfield, Berkshire Botanical Gardens, the Edith Wharton Mansion in Lenox, Naumkeag in Stockbridge, the Appalachian Trail, part of which is located in Berkshire County, the Taconic Mountains, and the Great Barrington Riverwalk. Also, I talked about 3 local colleges in the area. Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, or MCLA, in North Adams, Bard's College at Simon's Rock in Great Barrington, and Berkshire Community College in Pittsfield. There was also a major episode segment titled Remember When? On this segment, I discussed the major event that happened in Berkshire County. In this case, it was the famed Sheeptacular art exhibit that happened from 2003 to 2004. Lastly, I discussed some histories of towns in Berkshire County. First, I gave a baseball-centric discussion on the town of Dalton. Then, because the 2 towns are so close in location, I gave a double history on the towns of Lenox and Lee. Finally, North Adams received the WWHEN treatment, being one of only 2 cities in Berkshire County. The history of Berkshire County cities and towns will continue in 2021. The first episode after the double New Year's will contain a wide and expansive history on Berkshire County's largest city, Pittsfield. So stay tuned. Lastly, it's now time for the answer to this week's trivia question. As a reminder, this week's question was, how many episodes of WWHEN are available on Pittsfield Community Television's website? The answer is 34. This includes episodes that I did as part of my class for my senior year of MCLA, as I uploaded all episodes to my YouTube page and onto Pittsfield Community Television's website. It's been a difficult year, but doing WWHEN has been a huge honor during 2020. Without the help of my camera person, who has encouraged me to make the show what it is today, WWHEN would not be on the level that it is. That ends the New Year's episode of Weary Weekly History and Entertainment News. You can watch this week's episode on channel 1301 of PCTV, CTSB TV, and NBC-TC. Airtimes on all 3 of these networks vary. Visit the website shown here for more information. Also, if you would like to see the episodes in HD quality, make sure to check out my YouTube page at RT Weary. On our next episode, as discussed earlier, we will be taking a tour of the expansive history in Pittsfield. Plus, there will be more surprises in store. Thank you, goodbye to 2020, and have a happy and safe New Year.